More than half the farmers of the world live in a subsistence agriculture outside of the economies of their own country. They have had very little or no money with which to make purchases of the many items that you need for a decent life.
In the early 1900s, projections showed that the world would have over 6 billion people to support by the 21st century. With most of the population predicted to surge in underdeveloped nations, there was an increasing fear of world famine. While population grows geometrically, agriculture is only able to grow at a linear rate. There were hungry mouths to feed, and there was no possible way to feed the entire population with the resources at hand. Agriculture needed a transformation. While the world was facing great turmoil and strife, the father of the Green Revolution, Norman Borlaug, was fighting a different kind of battle, the battle against world hunger. His weapon of choice? Biotechnology. The Green Revolution began in 1943 when plant geneticist Norman Borlaug and a team of researchers arrived on Mexican soil. His goal was to improve agricultural techniques and biotechnological methodologies, which in turn would help alleviate starvation and improve the living quality of developing nations. Creating new genetically modified strains of wheat, rice, maize, and other crops, Borlaug planned to win the battle against world hunger. The hope was that these new crops and farming techniques would rescue third world countries from the brink of starvation. That's exactly what happened. The agricultural innovations brought to the poverty-stricken countries gave the farmers the skills and resources necessary to sustain themselves. This triggered a chain of events that would allow these once struggling nations to survive. Agricultural exports soared in quantity and diversity and allowed the countries to become self-sufficient. As the genetically modified crops thrived, farmers were able to use their increased income to purchase newer and superior farming machinery. This increase in revenue made farming easier, more reliable, and more efficient. The Green Revolution led to the modernization of agriculture and has had a profound social, economic, and political impact on the world. The Mexican government turned to the Rockefeller Foundation in their endeavor to nourish Mexico through agriculture. Borlaug was hired as the director of the Cooperative Wheat Research and Production Program and worked tirelessly to create a food source that was high-yield, disease-resistant, and pest-resistant. A major breakthrough in crop research came from the development of dwarf plants.
A gene was introduced into them that made them shorter. And by being shorter, they could respond to higher rates of soil nutrients, fertilizer, and grow a more robust plant that wouldn't fall over and be unharvestable by the farmer. So this dwarf trait was one of the revolutionary changes that happened in the varieties that farmers grew.
Tall plants would fall over or break with heavy use of fertilizers or fierce wind and rain. Dwarf plants are more durable, resistant to disease, protected from insects, and produce a higher yield. In 1943, Mexico was forced to import about half of its wheat. Within 13 years of using the techniques developed by Borlaug, Mexico was completely self-sufficient. Just 8 years later, Mexico was exporting 500,000 tons of wheat per year. After his success in Mexico, Borlaug traveled to India and Pakistan in 1961 to help their famine-threatened communities. India and Pakistan were two of the countries that were most at risk for the population boom, and the people were suffering starvation and malnutrition. They lacked the agricultural manpower to sustain their populations at the time, let alone their projected population by the 21st century. Even with the promise of success, the Green Revolution did not progress smoothly at first.
The biggest struggle was probably in getting farmers to trust the scientists. Farmers were used to trusting themselves, to doing what they were accustomed to, being responsible for their own seed. And in the Green Revolution, they had to be willing to try seeds that were generated from somebody that they didn't know. And they needed to be convinced that these scientists were on the right path.
After gaining the confidence of the country's inhabitants, Borlaug applied his biotechnological innovations toward developing new strains of rice.
This brings new hope. If we can keep this so-called green revolution alive, there is a hope that it will generate a whole new rhythm within their internal economies. This is our hope.
The result? An increase from 2 tons of wheat crops per hectare in the 1960s to triple that amount, 6 tons of wheat per hectare by the 1990s. This success was not only seen in wheat, but in other crops such as rice. India today has become one of the most successful rice producers in the world, exporting around 4.5 million tons in 2006. Borlaug trained local agronomists and scientists to carry on his work and to continue innovating new advancements. The Green Revolution team spread their knowledge of biotechnology to numerous hungry nations, including China, South Vietnam, Brazil, and Turkey. These agricultural innovations helped save the lives of millions, if not billions, of people across the globe. As with all scientific research, there were some unexpected consequences that arose as a result of the Green Revolution. Some environmentalists from developed nations in the West have a particularly harsh view of the products and techniques developed by Borlaug. Genetically modified crops use a combination of pesticides, organic and synthetic fertilizers, and irrigation. Environmentalists worry about the effect this long-term usage of chemicals will have on the environment. Additionally, more water is needed to support the crops in this area because of the poor soil quality. Some say this large use of resources is irresponsible. Due to inefficient irrigation, some of the pesticides and fertilizers percolate into the water supply. This damages the fragile balance of life in the rivers and lakes and pollutes the already diminished supply of drinking water the people have. Irrigation methods are soaking up a lot of the fresh water available in the land. There have been a few cases of birth defects that some theorize might be a result of the tainted water. Unfortunately, in order to feed starving nations, all of these techniques are necessary. People need to eat, and with the poor quality of the soil that plagues less developed countries, there really is no other alternative at this point. Despite the setbacks, the Green Revolution has done more to help the starving people of the world than any other project before it. Along with increasing crop yields, Borlaug bred these designer crops to have desirable qualities. Some strains of wheat were modified to have a high protein level to compensate for a lack of protein in their diet. This was incredibly important in areas where communities didn't have the finances to purchase meat. By breeding different strains of crops for desired attributes, agronomists were also able to create strains that were resistant to lethal plant diseases. Another advantage built into the high-yield crops is that farmers are able to produce more food on less land. This has saved millions of acres of rainforest and grassland from destruction. A new green revolution is on the horizon. With today's improved understanding of both science and cultural constructs, there is much work to be done. Over the years, we have discovered that preventing starvation does not come from solely teaching the people to farm. It comes from helping the country as a whole. Improving the infrastructure of third world countries should be a priority. Building roadways for transportation of goods, along with developing new irrigation methods, is crucial for economic advancement. Also, by finding a common ground between environmentalists and agronomists, we will be able to better protect the environment and save lives simultaneously. Both sides need to be aware of the importance of working together to create a better future for all.
Norman Borlaug left behind a big legacy. There's several aspects to it. The one that I like to think about is the power of science when it's targeted at an important problem.
It's undeniable that without the Green Revolution, millions of people would have starved. By modernizing agriculture, the Green Revolution gave people the tools necessary to transform their own lives. Norman Borlaug and his devoted team of researchers performed a feat that many believed impossible. Together, they created a program that changed the fight against world hunger forever.
We have won the battle against famine, but we have not won the war. We can and must give a decent standard of living to all.